What's up, everybody? Tendo here. That there's Hannah Warrior Princess, and check this out. We've got a pretty different video for you today. We've been getting so many questions in the last month or so about our antique stores that we sell toys and dishes and clothes at. Just tons of questions. So we figured we'd finally put together a video answering all the questions you guys have asked about our reselling booths. If you're interested, stick around because there's lots of interesting information coming your way, including how much we pay for the booths, how much we make off of them, just lots of other little details about how they operate, etc., etc. So if you're interested, stick around. It's time to go antiquing. All right, so let's jump right into this. Now, we're going to talk about several things now, but we're going to start out talking about exactly what these antique booths are, because we still get questions all the time about exactly what the nature of these stores are. And then we're going to talk about some of the details about how they operate. We're going to talk about money towards the end. That's probably what most of you are here for. And then at the end of that, I asked for questions on our Discord, which you should go join if you haven't already. So that way, if there's any questions you guys have that we didn't cover in this information that I have outlined in front of me, we'll be able to clear that up at the end. So stick around for that too. Now let's start with, what are we talking about? What you talking about, Willis? So plenty of you watching are gonna be completely aware of what these kinds of stores that we resell in are. You might shop at them regularly, you might have them in your hometown, but you have to understand that there's so many people watching our channel that have no idea what these stores even are, because either they live in a different country where they don't have this kind of store, or maybe you live even here in the US where you either have more traditional antique stores or you have more traditional flea market stores, and nothing that is basically a hybrid of the two, which is what I would describe these stores as, a hybrid between the traditional antique store and the flea market. Would you agree?
I definitely agree.
Now, that's troublesome for me, because every time we're walking around making these videos and we're in a thrift store and I say, oh, I'm gonna buy this for my toy booth, we always get a comment from someone who's only been here for a couple days on the channel, which I'm glad you're here. I'm not complaining about this. I'm just kind of explaining what we go through every day. People say, what toy booth are you talking about? What is that? And some people even think we're just talking about eBay when we say this. And we're not. We're talking about these antique stores that we sell at. And I've tried to call them many different things over the course of making our daily episodes, because at first I always just called them flea market booths, because that seemed to be the most all-encompassing term that I could use, that the most of you would go, oh, they have a booth at a flea market. But even then, we'd go to our flea market booths, leave stuff there and leave, and people in the comments would be like, how do you just leave it there? Because at your traditional flea market booths, you have to be there. It's usually on the weekends, etc., etc. So let's go through a list of things to describe this kind of modern day flea market store, antique store, whatever you want to call it, and just talk about how these specific varieties of stores work. Where should we even start? It's kind of difficult. I guess we should start by saying just clearly that these antique stores that we sell at, they might be in your area. You should go look around where you're at for these types of stores, because you've probably got an antique store that you've driven past 100 times in your area that might actually have a setup like this, that wants other resellers to come in and sell at them. Now, obviously this isn't the case. When I was a kid, before we had these types of stores in my hometown, we had an antique store or two that had a couple outside vendors, but it was nothing like this. So that leads us to the first question. When you put your product in one of these antique reselling stores, how do you sell your items? You want to start with the numeric system and tell them exactly how the products you put in your booth, how you put them in there, and then how they are transactioned at the store.
So each flea market has a setup that they want, but it's all pretty much the same. They want your vendor number on a tag, along with the price and a description of the item. So say we're putting a Mario plushie in our booth.
$10.
We put a $10 price tag on it. We write that it's a Mario plushie, and then we put our dealer number on it, which is a specific number that is assigned to us. And then the cashier is going to put in the price of the item, and then you pay for it, but then that cashier is going to put down that item goes to booth, to vendor number 438.
Correct. So every single item at my toy booth that sells has the number 438 written on it, and that's how those things are tallied. Now, there's a lot more to unpack there because a lot of you are going to be asking, well, how do you know what you've sold? Almost every single place we have a booth at sends us an email. Now these emails, we could make a whole video on how these emails work and how bad most of them suck. But basically at the end of every day, after a certain hour, an hour or so after every store has closed, we get an email to our specified email account that tells us the daily amount we have made for a day. And it's always nice. It's always a nice time of day. We're laying down in bed, we're winding down, I'm editing a video, email pops up, hey, you made $200 a day. Sweet. Pretty good feeling. And this system works pretty well. We've very rarely ever had a time where the emails didn't come in. Obviously, email systems go down and sometimes you miss an email. But by and large, it's a huge part of our daily routine to check our numbers. And that part usually doesn't fail. Now, all that kind of leads me into the next note that I have, which is theft. I would say the biggest question that we get about these booths right behind the dollar amounts that we make is, well, what do you do about theft? And I think that's because so many people, it's just so foreign to have a flea market booth but not be there. I think people's brain immediately go to, they're going to steal all your stuff. And you're not wrong. Things are going to get stolen. And I want to say that first and foremost. If the possibility of theft in this type of store is a deal breaker for you, I think you probably just don't have a good idea of how retail works. There's not a retail store on the face of the planet Earth that doesn't have to deal with some amount of theft. So there's a couple things to unpack there. First and foremost, tell them how the store works. There's employees there, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so each of the stores have set employees that just walk the floor. They just are there to answer questions for the customers. They're there to help, just maintain the store a little bit. But they're just an extra set of eyes that kind of go, hey, you're being a little bit suspicious. Do you have questions? And
every single one of these places that we resell at have security cameras. Now there's different levels. Our booth in Kentucky, which may it rest in peace, the whole store, the whole chain or whatever, I don't know if it's the chain, but I think it's just our local store because it's not doing well. But the store in Kentucky we sell at, they've always been the most rigorous. I've seen them chase people out the doors. They have a wall of shame with pictures of people huge and blown up that aren't allowed back in, so the people working at the cash register can have a familiarity and look at people coming in the door.
They're hardcore.
They're real serious about it. And actually, I really appreciate it. And every time we go back to Kentucky to restock that booth in the past, we just hear more stories about the last person that tried to rob something in some new crazy way. So theft is going to happen. It's not going to happen a lot. I would say out of all of our booths here in town, we have 3 different booths in town. I've probably noticed stuff stolen 2 or 3 times. And it's usually someone ripped open a game case, took the disc, or I used to bag up my blades. Now I'm putting them in a tougher plastic case. Someone slid a couple of them open and actually they didn't steal anything. They switched out the parts with what they wanted, so they didn't raise any suspicions at the desk. So these things are going to happen. They're not a deal breaker. If you're going to sell anything anywhere, you should count on some losses of that nature. But I find, at least with the booths that we have been involved with, that the people running the establishment are pretty good about taking care of it.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't worry about that, and I hope that answers your questions about theft. I think it's just something that some people are, not all, but some people are inclined to be a little bit more paranoid about, but we're not. It's not something that really factors into our thoughts whatsoever. Now, let's talk about just a couple more things and we'll move on to some more theoretical stuff. Like I want to talk a little bit here in a minute about who we think reselling stuff at these kinds of booths would be good for. But first, there's a couple more technical things, and that's the different ways in which you can sell in these types of stores. So you tell them about the lock boxes first, and then I'll talk about the general parts of the store.
Yeah, so they have one of our specific booths here in Phoenix has an entire dedicated section to just showcases.
About a quarter of the entire building is rows and rows of lock boxes.
Yeah, and then the other flea market building that we have, it has them all in the front there as well. So both of them have it. But they are glass cases with a couple of shelves in it. They're usually a little bit cheaper than the booths, and you just stockpile them with as much stuff as you can, and you're good to go.
And if you've been watching our videos for a little while, you'll know what we're talking about. Most of them, these IKEA Billy bookshelves behind us, they're almost exactly the shelves that they use. But it's one of two ways usually, and sometimes there's other ways to sell inside of these types of stores. I would break it down into rooms, booths, and lock boxes. And the lock boxes are just generally referred to as lock boxes, but sometimes you can pay a little less for one that's just a shelf and not locked up. And to be honest with you, this is gonna kind of aching back to this conversation we just had about the security and theft and stuff. I always recommend people when they join our Discord and ask for advice on starting and getting into these stores. A lot of people want to start with just a lockbox to see if it's worth it and then move to a booth or a room. And I always suggest going with the box that's not locked. And I think, again, for a lot of people, that's going to seem counterintuitive. But every single one of the stores that we resell in has locked boxes. I'd say 75% of them are locked, and there's a couple rows, 25% or so, without doors on them. The ones that are locked, you have to go, you have to eyeball what you want. You have to, sometimes you hit a buzzer and someone comes and goes, oh, hey, here, I'll let you in this box. Or sometimes you have to go up front and ask for the key. Then they know that you have the key, so they're watching the cameras to keep an eye on you. So those are generally safe, but I personally feel that any single thing that you can remove time from people picking up your product and going and buying it, you should remove. So I personally don't recommend the lock boxes.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, I really wouldn't want to walk in and have to track down an employee and then wait for them and then get the thing out of the thing and then they've got to carry it up to the front. And
it's going to have to be something pretty special in the lock boxes for me. And that's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about this as me as a customer. If I'm going to go buy this stuff and it's in those lock boxes, it's going to have to be really special and worth my time. Even if it's a little Mario trinket I want for my shelf that's just a couple bucks, I'm not going to go through that process for a $2 Mario trinket. I'm going to wait until I find it somewhere else. And, and that's me. That may not be you. You may not care. But a lot of people that are watching are going to think about reselling games at these types of stores, and they're going to think, well, I don't want my discs stolen. Well, the only discs we've had stolen yet are ones I forgot to tape. I like to tape my games shut and then put notes on the outside, what's inside, what's not. This has a manual, this doesn't have a manual, etc. So there's a lot of options here. There's going to be a lot of personal preference. And one of the biggest things you can take away from this video is that you should just go with your personal preferences. Don't let anybody in the comments or elsewhere tell you, oh, you should, you shouldn't. Because, again, people are going to care about these types of things as far as security goes to many different degrees. So there's that. So that's lock boxes. I hope you understand what we're talking about there. If not, just watch some of our older videos. You'll see what we're talking about. We honestly, the way we shop, we don't even look at the lock boxes.
We don't.
We really don't. So that's just us. And to be honest with you, when we try to kind of pay attention when we're in the stores, there's 2 people in the lock boxes at any given time. That's it. And then the rest of the hundreds of people are in the store.
Yeah.
It is still a good start, especially if you have good products and you can, have something that the store doesn't have. In those lock boxes, you could probably do well, but that's kind of the hard part. But we'll get to more of that kind of philosophy stuff here in a minute when we talk about who these kinds of things might be for. But we go with booths. The booths are just usually, like the standard is usually a 10 by 10 booth, and the prices vary. We'll get to that in a minute as well, but booths can, or sometimes where we sell in Kentucky, they don't actually have walls pre-built everywhere. Sometimes you'll just get a square with tape on the floor and you bring in tables or build your own walls. A lot of the times they're very, very accommodating to let you build whatever you want to. But that's not the case for most of the booths here in town. Most of them have these walls. Sometimes they're pegboarded, sometimes they're not. And again, prices are varying, sometimes by size and sometimes by placement in the store that the store has predetermined gets better traffic or doesn't. But then there's both of our places that we do this kind of reselling in here in town, they actually have huge rooms. Usually along the outer parts of the building where they're much bigger usually than 10 by 10s. They're almost like little garages, and people pay way more money and pay premiums for those to have even bigger spaces and be able to customize those a little better, right? Because the booths you get, they're a square box. The rooms, though, they've got drywall studs like normal and all these things, and you can definitely do something much different. I don't know if we'll ever move on to doing those booths. We might if we ever just become the toy people here in town or something like this, but it's not something we've considered yet. We're pretty happy with the booths that we have. The last thing to talk about as far as how those booths work before we move on, there is sales days, and perhaps maybe this might have been something that would be a better addendum underneath the money section, but there's always sales days at these places that really draw people to come to them. And honestly, the best days and weekends we've had at these booths are always, oh, Labor Day weekend, come to the store, you get 15% off. And that 15% off is usually going to come from your product. So you're going to be taking a 15% hit on that day. You can opt out of it most of the time, but not always. From store to store, it's different. Like the stores we're at, I'm pretty sure they all will allow you to opt out of it. One store we've been at and moved out of would not allow you to opt out of it. These things are going to be different. And we're going to get to a bit more of this conversation here in a minute, the kinds of questions you should ask if you ever want to go get into these kinds of booths, and that will definitely be one of them. Try to find out about the fees and how they'll change for sales days, etc. But that's it. Who? You? Maybe. All right, now let's talk about who out there watching should consider selling at this kind of store. We get a lot of people that either are part-time resellers or are in the midst of transitioning over to full-time resellers asking if this is for them. And I think the answer is a general yes. I think it's for everybody, but you have to decide what you want out of it and what you want to put into it. And then you have to do research on your local antique store, flea market store, and come to your own conclusion. Could you do this full time? Absolutely. We know people who do, both here in town and back home. One family comes to mind that does it full time, and I think they have about 20 booths. The kind of store we're talking about right now is very popular in my home state of Kentucky and around there. So I know a family that has about 20 different booths in 20 different stores, and they make a pretty good living. It's a lot of work. They have their robots. They have turned it into a very specific kind of work. They basically drive all around town a couple times a month. I think once to pick up checks and then once just for restocking. So they spend their full-time living at home, sourcing stuff, pricing it at home, driving around a couple days a month to restock their booths and reset them. And once you understand that kind of thing, you can see that it becomes possible. Like if you've watched our videos for long enough now, you will kind of know that we restock about once every 2 weeks. So even if you have 20 booths, you can still restock them every couple weeks. It's just going to be a long day when you're restocking them. So that's the extreme though. I'm telling you that to show you that extreme side. I think there's a much smaller side where if you're wanting to do it part-time and maybe you're going to consider to get one of these lock boxes that are a lot cheaper, you could definitely do that kind of part. If you sell cameras or something, those are usually good in those lock boxes. If you sell McDonald's toys, little collectible trinkets, pops, there's a lot of pops in those lock boxes. So those are always a good start. Then I would say those lock boxes, somebody having one lock box is this extreme. So the low extreme, the high extreme. And then I think you'll find people like us in the middle. We're hoping to have a few more booths. There's not as many options here in Phoenix as there is in the state of Kentucky. I know that's not quite an even comparison, but it is what we're dealing with. There's a couple more stores here that we could put our booths in, and we plan to, depending on how fast we want to continue to grow. But if you're wondering if it's for you, I think it is. I think it could be added to your revenue stream sources, which I think is the most important answer to this question is that if you're wanting to make this happen full time and you think that these kinds of reselling booths might be for you, I'd be nervous about it maybe, but I would say it's possible, but you have to understand that extreme. But for us, that's not it. We don't make a living doing this. I had some questions just yesterday on our videos about what we're doing that in their question, they seem to suggest this was all we do. What's our backup? And it's not. This is one of about 7 revenue streams we have. We resell clothing on a specific app. We sell electronics on eBay. We sell toys and dishes in these booths. We have YouTube ad revenue. We have merch revenue. And all we do every day is trying to find another way to add one more stream so that we don't have all our fish in one basket, because that's how we think and that's how we work. And I think when we get to the numbers here on these booths, you'll see even more so why that's a good idea. So hold on tight for that. But do you have anything you want to add to that?
No.
I think it could work for you, but you got to do your research. And I'm hoping that by the time we're done with this video, and you're maybe hoping to do this kind of thing, we'll have given you the questions you need to ask when doing your research, when talking to people who operate these kinds of stores. Now, let's move on to the next section. Where are you gonna find your trash? How do we do our sourcing? So that's difficult because we don't just source for these booths. So obviously, if you've been around this channel very long at all, we go to the thrift store. Of course, depending on where you live, there's lots of other options. Here in Phoenix, where we live, yard sales have they have about an equally narrow windows everywhere else, but like here in the summer, you can't do yard sales. You can, some people still have them, but we will not go to them. It's 120 degrees outside.
No, thank you.
It's not the only option. It's not the absolutely only option. You know, thrift stores, yard sales, flea markets aren't the only options for your sourcing. There are products you could make and resell in these booths. Plenty of people do that. The people that just opened the booth across from ours at our booth at the Merchant Square, they sell laser cut metals of different kinds. They make them all themselves, and it's quite beautiful. That's obviously a little bit extreme. A cheap laser cutter is $11,000. They're coming a little cheaper now, but a good laser cutter starts at $9,000 to $11,000 to $12,000. So that's not really the best option, right? But you can also. There's also some sorts of products that you can order online in bulk and sell in these booths, and that can all be difficult because some stores are going to want you to be strictly antique, some aren't going to care. Thankfully, the stores we're in don't want you to strictly be antique, so we get away with like selling our stickers, which are a perfect example. We order bulk stickers off the internet, put $1.50 on each one, and we sell them. So there's plenty of other ways for you to source your stuff if you want to do this type of reselling. You've just got to get creative. And honestly, I found the more creative we've got, the better it's worked out for us. And stickers and other little things that we've been able to order like that are an example of that creativity. Just spend some time thinking on it. But let's move on. Next question. Hey, come closer. Closer. You gotta ask the right questions. There's a lot to unpack here, but we're gonna make it as simple as possible. One of the biggest things that you're gonna need to worry about when getting your own antique booth is what is gonna work at the store, but almost more importantly, what the store is gonna allow you to sell. There's a lot of little things under that umbrella. And the first being, I think, and maybe the most obvious one, some of these stores that you're gonna sell at are gonna be antique stores. They're going to be very adamant that what you sell is vintage and or antique, however you want to define the age of your product. There's a store in town here that's semi-popular that we've wanted to get into, but they're so strict about the antique stuff that we're kind of like, because my toys wouldn't work, because my toys are like 10% antique. They're not that old. Her dishes are, so maybe we could do that there at that store, but it's important to have that conversation before you move in. And it's a little funny story to kind of add to that. When we were going to first move into one of our toy booths here, we asked, because this is a really good thing to do, and they were really like discouraging about my Nerf guns and some of the other stuff we sell. But I don't think it came from a place of we don't want this here, though that's how they presented it, that they were afraid that, you know, sometimes managers at these stores are like, oh, we don't want this stuff here, and they ask people to take stuff out. But I think it was just a miscommunication more so than it was we don't want Nerf guns here. Because once we brought all our stuff in and put it in our yellow shelves and all my colorful Nerf guns, they love our booth now. They're like, oh, this is great. We love having you here. And even just yesterday, they featured us on their Facebook page, and it's all really good. But there is going to be some sort of anxiety sometimes if you're coming in to sell at these antique booths and you're selling something they're not used to having. And our booths very much fit that bill, because here where we're at, there's not toy people. The people that I was just telling you about, the story about back home, and the people that have like 20 booths, they do mostly toys. Toys is their thing. So every booth, every antique store, every resale store in town has toys back where I'm from. But here it's not the case. So when we move in, they're like, oh, it wasn't so much of a, we don't want that. It's a, we can't promise you this is going to go well, because no one's ever had a whole booth of toys here. That's what they told us when we moved in. And I was like, well, I'm pretty confident it's going to work. I just was very confident to them. And sure enough, it's been working out for us very well. So the questions you want to ask are, you know, make sure you know before you go into one of these stores, is this going to work out? Are they going to allow you to even do it, et cetera, et cetera? And most of the time, I think most of the time you're going to be okay, but you just need to know before you move in. So other things you need to know before you move in pretty much will already have been answered in the earlier part of this video, and we'll get to more of the money stuff, because I'm sure that's still, a lot of you are going to have anxieties over, is it going to be worth it, is it not? Something I can say in this section of the video that I will reiterate again in the money section is that it can be volatile. So the questions you might ask is like, when are the good seasons? So maybe if you're really on the fence about opening up a booth and maybe you're just not ready to pull the trigger, go to your local antique stores and ask questions about when their good time of the year is and isn't. And if they tell you a good time of the year, maybe consider moving in closer to that. Because we're actually here in town, we're in the bad months. As far as the people are concerned that run these places, all of them have told us it's great during the winter because there's a huge amount of tourism and the snowbirds, you know, people moving here for the warmth during the winter. There's a lot more action at these stores during the winter, right?
Correct.
So that's something else. That's something else maybe you could ask about in your research to help you make your decision. I'm not telling you this to try to influence your decision. I think these are things you need to understand on your own so that you can make a proper decision. Anything else you'd like to add to that? Anything else that you were worried about when we were opening our booths that you might maybe wish now you had asked before we got in?
Not really. I mean, the main thing really was feeling confident about putting the right product in the booth. And honestly, the best way that we found out what works for my dish booth was walking around the store and seeing what other people sell and be like, okay, they've got a lot of this, that must work, or I'm not seeing a lot of this.
Or there's too much of it.
Yes.
Because there's where we have one of our toy booths but don't have a dish booth for her yet. We haven't moved in a dish booth because there's too much of what she sells.
Too much.
But at the place she does have a dish booth, there wasn't a ton of it, so we were comfortable moving in.
Yeah.
So these are some things you can try to ask if you ever want to move into an antique booth, into a flea marketplace. But you'll find that the people running those establishments will be varying degrees of helpful and not helpful in those regards. Sometimes you will ask how much you think I'll make, and they won't come anywhere close to approaching that question, answering that question. And sometimes, like one of our booths here, they were pretty communicative about it. They say, no promises, of course. And of course, we're like, yeah, we're not looking for any promise, just a roundabout. A lot of people during the bad months will double their rent costs. So rent will be $300, they'll make $600. So they'll pay the rent and make $300. And then in the good months, it's anywhere from double that to sky's the limit. So, but we've definitely asked those questions before. And I bet some of you watching that have in any way experiencing this can attest. I've had even people messaging me telling me their experience since watching us and deciding to do this also. They've been met with varying degrees of not being answered for questions like this. But that's a good one. That's a good one. So the last question that maybe you should ask before you move in is going to be upfront costs for moving into these booths. We've had a lot of different scenarios, a month up front, a month plus these fees. We even had one of these antique stores kind of beg us to move in because they saw a picture of our toys at a different place and they wanted that in their store, so they gave us a little bit of a break. Is that going to happen to you? Don't know, but it has happened to us, but that's a question not for us. It doesn't matter what we paid to get into these booths. It was mostly just a month's rent up front, but it can be different at different places, so keep that in mind. Now, let's move on to the money. Show me the money. So the money section of this video, I think might get just a little bit complicated. I'm going to try not to make it complicated, but you're going to have to do some math on your own when you hear our numbers, as well as try to look at the money that we make through the lens of your neighborhood or the lens of what you're doing. Because us telling you our numbers is going to be cool for a lot of you that are watching, because you're up on our day-to-day lives, and this is just information that would help you understand us more. I think some of you are maybe here for that, but if you're really looking at maybe opening this type of booth, our numbers, I honestly think, aren't going to mean much to you. That's just all there is to it, because every type of antique store, resale store that we're talking about is not every type, but every one of these stores that you'll go to is going to be a little bit different from the last.
Yes. So many factors.
So many factors, and in your area, they're bound to be much different than they are here. So let's talk about a couple things before we get strictly into dollar amounts. Let's talk about how we pay the booths first. This is a pretty big question we get. That, of course, includes how much do we pay for the booth, as well as fees. I had somebody comment one time that they were really excited to try this kind of reselling because they hated eBay fees.
Yeah.
And honestly, when all is said and done, it's about the exact same, at least for the booths we're in. And I've heard of them being even more, technically, because what is the eBay and PayPal fee once it's all said and done?
It's about 10%, I would say.
Okay, is it around there? I don't know that we've ever actually calculated it up. It's fees on online selling is something you got to just make it go away. It just is what it is, and it's there, and it's part of it. And these fees are too. And I think there's a lot of people that might be on the fence about doing this kind of reselling that, quite unfortunately, may be discouraged by the fees, because I think they're going to be a little bit higher than you think. So let's talk about fees first. We're going to come back around to how much we pay for booth to booth, but we wanted to get out of the way that at every single one of these stores we've ever sold at, 10% is taken off of what's paid at the cash register.
Yeah, that's basically to pay for the convenience of having.
Well, yeah, that's on top of the rent that we pay.
Yes.
I have heard a few occasions where the stores like to try to be a little bit more helpful, and sometimes fees don't kick into a certain amount, et cetera, et cetera. But everywhere we sell at, even though you're paying rent, you're paying 10% off the top, period, the end, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to come back around to the rent cost, because I want to tell you the rent cost at the same time as we tell you how much money we make, because it's easier to kind of do the math that way. How they pay, this one has a few interesting tidbits under it, because all the places that we sell at kind of pay us a little bit differently. Let's start with our least favorite way. Tell them about how our least favorite paychecks come.
So there's one booth that we have that pays once a month. And it's always in paper check.
It's always mailed.
Yes.
Yeah, it's always mailed to us, and it's always a little bit late. It's always slow.
A lot late.
Yeah, we've gotten one like almost a month later, but these things happen.
Yeah.
This is the one that's closing down anyway, so
yeah.
It's not the most ideal situation, but that's also partly our fault. We could pick up that check if we were there, but that's just what we had to deal with in that situation. None of you will probably struggle with this, because none of you are probably going to open up booths 2,000 miles away. That was just on us. But that is one way. And honestly, that was the way I was familiar with before we opened all of our newest booths, was just getting paid once a month. And honestly, that always just made the most sense to me. But now that we've opened up our booths, all of our booths here pay twice a month.
Yes.
Actually, we had a booth here that paid once a month. Or did they pay?
We did.
Yeah,
no,
okay. Yeah. We had one here, and we've since closed it down. And basically, the second booth we have open here, we moved stuff from there and opened it up in the other one, because there was lots of things about that first place that we just didn't really enjoy. But they're just to show you how it goes either way. Here in town, multiple places, once a month, twice a month. But we quite like the twice a month places, because it's quite like a paycheck. Now, we have two different stores here in town that we get twice a month paychecks, and they're completely different. So explain that to them, because it's a little tricky.
So one of them is super complicated, because they give you your entire amount of sales, monetary wise.
They give you a check with their 10% taken out.
Yes.
The 10%, but not the booth fee.
Not the booth fees. So you get a check for your sales, and then you have to go it's a paper check. Go take it to your bank, get it deposited, and then get it out in cash because they want a cash, not a paper check at all.
They don't take cashier's checks either?
They might.
I don't remember.
But
we always just do cash.
Yeah, and then you have to go take it back to them and give them your.
And honestly, that's super frustrating. That is almost comparable to me for eBay fees. Not exactly, but you know how your eBay fees come around and you kind of forget, and then like boom, you owe eBay $500.
It's awful.
It's kind of like that when that check comes around. We've kind of gotten used to it at that place because essentially what will happen is we basically look at it this way. That check, we just don't count on it. And then once we actually just paid that. So we just paid that booth fee from last time's checks. And now this next check coming up is going to be a big one that's just money in the bank no matter what. So it's a little bit, it kind of sucks. But the other place that we are at here in town, twice a week checks, they take their percentage and the booth fee out, and the checks that you're sent home with is just profit. And that's so much more preferable. You don't ever have to, it's nice when you don't ever have to worry about exchanging money.
Yes.
And so I don't know why the other place does it. And you'll find a lot of places, we've been in one place where it was almost clear they were doing it to not have to pay taxes on it or something. And there's none of the booths we're in now. They're all above board, and you can tell they're great establishments. But sometimes it's a bit weird why they have to have it, and sometimes they're adamant about wanting it in cash. But the places we're at now, it's split. So these are also, for the last section, questions you might want to find out if you're ever going to get your own booth or you're trying to do the research to get one. But we quite like it when you just get that check and it's just your money.
Yeah.
So that's how we pay. So how they pay, how we pay, it's all kind of mixed up in there. But otherwise, the places that just take the money out, that's it. There's nothing else. There's no transactions. It seems kind of weird that you're just going to this place every week to pick up a check and put new toys in. The other place, it feels more real because you do have to pay them money.
Yeah.
But if you're ever going to go start up your own booth, you kind of will put these things together and you'll find out that it's easier. It's going to be easier than you think it is, except for the sign-up fee. Most places are going to make you pay a full month up front, and some of these places that might be the only money you ever hand them, unless you have some bad months and owe them more money. But we have a booth here in town where we paid them our move-in fee. We've never handed them another dime, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that leads us to how much we pay for each booth and how much it makes. We're not going to go into some big speech right now about the profit that we make. We're not going to give you a huge dollar amount how much we made this much in booths, though I guess you could add this information up that we're about to give you and determine for yourself how much it is. But I do think these numbers we're going to give you are true. We're just going to tell you how much the booth costs and then the highest check we've made there and the lowest. And you can kind of just see, I think it's going to be interesting for you to see because there is some volatility here. We've gotten some low checks, but it's something that comes with it. And I'll say before we jump into these numbers, I'm always just fine if we don't owe them any money.
Yeah.
Right? Which kind of doesn't count for the place we always have to pay the money anyways. But for like the rest of the booths where there's no transactions, as long as we don't have to go hand them money, I'm usually going to be okay because you're going to have a bad month, you're going to have a bad season. And for me, if we just get to the bad seasons, making our money off of sticker sales, it's good.
It's golden.
It's going to be great. You may not feel that way, but we definitely do feel that way. So let's start with our booth in Kentucky that is closing down here in a month. They're closing down. They always did okay. It just the coronavirus messed them up.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that going around, and I hate it for them, and I hate not having that store because we were going to actually travel back pretty soon, and we had some really cool plans for how to change the booth into something a little bit better than it is and a little bit more conducive to our traveling. So the booth in Owensboro, we paid $160 for a 10x10. And mind you, I think when we first signed up for it, we got like 6 months for $100. So it was an even better deal there. And I had one, and this place pays monthly. So the most I ever made there in a whole month was $700. And I remember thinking that was pretty crazy the first the first time that happened.
And that's after booth fees.
And that's after booth fees. So it's technically a little bit more. Yeah, if you, however you want to look at it, it was $700 in our pocket. And that was pretty nuts, we thought, until we opened the booths here and made that in 2-week periods. So I don't know. Maybe there's some people that sell in these types of booths in the Midwest. If anybody does what we're talking about and would like to share their experience and maybe not dollar amounts, maybe whatever, in the comments below, it might be very helpful for the people watching. If you want to add some information, because I don't honestly know for other people and other stores in Kentucky, around Kentucky, if maybe their numbers will be a little bit closer to our 2-week paychecks here, because we can often make $200 in 2 weeks here, where it took a month in Kentucky, and we never top $700 in Kentucky. But we've also gotten checks as low as $150 for a whole month in Kentucky, which means we paid $150 in rent and we made $150 on top of it, which sucks, and it would probably not be worth it if it were that every month. But those are averages. They've been in between there all over the place, and we've hit near 700 a couple times. We've hit near 150 a couple times. There's a seasonality to it in Kentucky as well. So that's our booth in Kentucky. We have 2 booths. We have 2 stores that we have booths in here in town. One of them we have just 1 booth in, and we'll talk about that one first. We pay $235 for a 7x7 booth. It's barely that. It's almost 6x7.
Yeah.
And we thought that was crazy when we moved in, because we were used to those Kentucky prices. But we found out very quickly why it was that much, because as soon as we moved into that store, our first paycheck hit almost $1,000.
Yeah.
And we were like, whoa, that's a 2-week period. So for a month there, the second one was less, but it was still like $700, maybe even almost $8. Okay. So I have it written down here. It was like $745. The second one was, so almost $2,000 in a month. And then we were like, well, that booth fee was nothing. I mean, compared to it's a big chunk of that, don't get me wrong, but when you put that in line with the numbers we already thought were going to be normal from Kentucky, it was quite a bit of money. So the high there, the highest high check, we brought home a check of $980, and the lowest one we brought home yet, which was actually this most recent one, was $350. And that's just that.
We're in peak low season right now.
We're in peak low season. We've been told that the high seasons are it's incredible. Of course, the people running the place are going to talk it up a little bit, but I can't wait. I can't wait to see what it's like, because if there's months where we get multiple $1,000 checks every 2 weeks, it's gonna be all right. It's gonna be some walking around money,
some Christmas money,
some sody pop money. There you go. All right, so there's another store here in town that we have 2 booths in, and the numbers keep going up. I put them in this order kind of on purpose. So we have a 12x12. It's almost a 12x14 because they messed up when they measured it out, and we got some extra space. No complaints here, but we pay $350. And that's our biggest booth. It's full of yellow shelves, lots of yellow stuff. And the highest, and this gets interesting, because the highest I've ever gotten there is a $600 check.
For a 2-week period.
For a 2-week period, yeah. The rest of these are all 2-week. And that, that's okay. That's because, don't get confused here, that's $350 for the month. So if I took home $600, that was also paying half of that rent fee. So $175 came out of, this gets confusing. I told you it would. This is also the store that doesn't withhold our rent. So yes, I got two $600 checks from them this month, and one of them I had to give half of the $600 back to pay rent. Okay, and that's it. And the lowest one we've gotten from there was $260. So you can kind of see, if you were only going to get $260 checks, 2 of them, and then pay one of them back for what's the rent fee, $350. There's not a lot of profit on top of there. Yeah. But we haven't yet gotten, for some reason, I don't know why it works out this way. I could probably make up some reasons, but I'm not going to try to. It's always a big check, then a little check, big check. That's how it's been working out for us so far. Now, mind you, also, we've only had this booth for a few months now.
Yeah.
And we'll definitely probably have to remake this video at some point to kind of talk about maybe how the numbers have changed later on down the road.
Yeah.
But the high and low of that one, $600 and $260. Now, this gets more interesting because we have a second booth at that store. Her booth is much, much, much smaller.
Yeah.
Like a third. but still cost $300. And this is an interesting bit. I kind of hinted at it in a different section, but they charge so much for it because
it's in a prime spot in the store.
Where it's sitting is like considered the center aisle. Everyone goes by it. And when we first got into this booth, we were kind of like, okay, you got to take all this stuff with a grain of salt when, the person that's trying to get you to pay them to move in is telling you something. In the first couple months, your checks were about like my low end was $250. The lowest check you've gotten in that booth was $290. Okay, which is, again, it's not bad. It kind of sucks considering how much we're paying for rent. But her newest paycheck was a whopper. It was pretty much as big as that first armadillo check, real close to $1,000. It was right over $900. I'm in love with the mailman. So let's kind of do a wrap up on our thoughts before we get into some question and answers. Should you do this? Given those numbers, I think a few people might be invigorated, and I think a few people might be a little bit more hesitant because, if nothing else, those numbers prove that this is volatile.
Yes.
They're all up and down. Sometimes they're wildly surprising, and sometimes they're a bit of a heartache. But I can say that since we started doing this, we haven't lost any money.
True.
That has been our experience. Now, of course, in all those dollar amounts that you just heard us talk about, that does not include the time that we put in and, of course, the money we put into buying the product. Now, I personally would like to pat ourselves on the back for how we source our product. We pay next to nothing for it. If you're complaining about the prices we spend at our thrift stores, you're probably complaining about the money I spend on video games. But all the stuff that I put in my booth, I'm paying $2 for a Buzz Lightyear and I'm selling it for $20. And I have very specific margins that, unless I'm just really feeling giddy about it, I don't go over. I try to spend $2 to sell $20, or I don't mess with it. And that's worked out for us pretty well. Your dishes are even better a lot of the time.
Yeah, sometimes it's a little tricky because some of the dishes don't sell for as much, but I know that they'll sell quickly, so
Yeah.
I go ahead and pay a little bit more, and it's okay.
So there's that. So I wish that we could put a better cap on this conversation about whether or not you should try to do this. I think if you have wiggle room and you can take a loss for a couple months, I think it'll be worth it. We got lucky enough that, more so because of what we're selling, what we sell is so unique that I think we never experienced a loss in our earliest months, because every one of these stores has like a base amount of people that shop there so much that you're going to get shopped if you have unique enough stuff, if you have quality enough stuff, rather. So I think we got lucky. I just don't want to promise that that's not going to happen. I don't want to say we never lost money, you won't. But I think it's worth a shot. You just need to watch this video 2 or 3 times, take notes on the questions to ask, the research you need to do, and make sure you're aware of everything going in, and then I think you can do it. I think if you go into these stores and sell something that no one else is selling and it's quality and you can get it cheap enough, I think you will make money. You have questions? I have answers. All right, let's jump into some Q&A now. I asked for some questions over on our Discord that you guys had about this kind of reselling that we're doing. And there was lots of questions about the payment and the obvious stuff. And we're going to just kind of glaze past those and try to answer some of the questions that we feel we haven't already answered in this video. So let's start with a question from Gamer Goose. How did you choose your booth locations? How bad was the trial and error? So 2 questions there. How we chose them was not so difficult, because here where we live, there's only a few options. So out of the 5 or 6 stores that are here, well, actually the first one we opened up probably without doing enough research. It was just near a place we frequented, and it seemed good enough, and it was actually pretty cheap. The prices were all comparable to our booth in Kentucky. So we were like, let's do this. Turned out to be a bad idea. So that actually answers the second question. The trial and error, that was all the trial and error we needed. We did a lot of research after that. We went to every store in town that did this kind of reselling, every single one of them, and we basically just went with the ones that seemed like they had a lot of traffic and that felt good. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. Maybe we should have done some more technical research, but the ones that felt good. And then we kind of just threw the prices of the booths to the wind, because that's not really a good way to make the decision, because you got to find out how much you're going to make first, and you're never going to know till you do it, because no one's going to tell you. How close are you guys to a second dish booth, and how do you determine the dish prices against eBay, other booths, etc.? Great questions. How close are we to having a second dish booth? We have enough dishes for it.
Yes.
The difficult part has been that we're trying to get some travel in right now, but then there's the coronavirus. If the coronavirus hadn't happened, we'd have already had probably a third dish booth and we'd been out of town. That's where we would be. But coronavirus kind of makes that question hard to answer. We're ready for it. We've got the money set aside to do it. We've got the dishes put aside to do it. Just logistics of everything because of what's going on makes that hard. Now, how do we determine prices? Pretty much the way we do with everything else. We look at the way that things have sold on eBay usually and try to go a couple dollars under.
Yeah.
Depending on the item. I mean, if it's hot commodity, we'll put it at or above the price sometimes. And to be honest with you, there's some items, and you might have an example of this, I don't know, but there's some items that for sure you can get a bit of a premium on and sell for more than you think. For some reason, the cheap plastic 12-inch figures that cost $5 new at Walmart right now still sell for $5 at your toy booth. So there's lots of different things, but you're stuck between trying to get as much money as possible and being cheap enough that people will buy it.
Yeah, and I mean, a factor for my dish prices is how much of it is in the store. Like with my Corningware, there's a bunch of it in the store already, so I do try to make it a little bit cheaper so that people will be like, oh yeah, I'll buy this one for $12 instead of $15 for the other one. And there's some things that are like very antique-y that eBay is going to say, oh, that's only worth like $10. But it's an antique store, so I can sell it for $20 because people are expecting it there.
I would say pricing stuff to sell on eBay has always been easy for us. It's not hard to find out how much the last one sold for and to see if you can get that much for it. Antique booths are different. People will spend money different there. If they can pick up something there and not order it on eBay, it's complicated. But we generally, not including shipping prices, if it sells for $20 on eBay, I try to put 17 or 18 on it for my toys. That's just my strategy. Some people aren't going to like that. Some people are going to understand it, but that's what we do personally. But thanks for that question. That was a good one. The next question is from Christine. And a little side note, we actually met Christine today after she posted this question. We were walking into the grocery store. She worked next door to the grocery store, saw us walking. I guess she recognized my gorilla-like gait. I don't know. But she came out and said hi. So if you're watching, Christine, it was nice to meet you. Very interesting that this happened on this day. But her question is, my husband and I really want to retire from our real jobs. Not that what you do isn't real, but you know what I'm saying. We do know what you're saying. We don't want real jobs either. We're completely with you on that. And do something together like open some booths and strictly resell. Our kids are pretty much grown, so we have less financial responsibility. We live in Santan Valley, which is just across the way from us. But we were just nervous to make the jump. How did you make the decision to become full-time resellers, and was it a scary leap? Well, I would say making the leap to resellers, though this isn't really specifically the booths were a later step. We started reselling before we quit our jobs, and we transitioned over to it. And honestly, we waited way too long because we were way too scared.
Yeah.
The money was there way earlier than we took the leap. But at the same time, we were making that reselling money on top of that real job money, and it was pretty great. And we got to where we didn't want to lose that. We wanted all that money, but we stopped being greedy. And honestly, we've replaced all that money and then some now that we have all these multiple revenue streams. So I'm not a person who likes giving advice because there's just too many variables. I'm too conscious about all these variables that could lead me to give you advice that just doesn't fit your situation. But I would say, if you really want to do it, start now. Go get the booth now. If it's something you guys have already decided to do, go get the booth. Start listing things on eBay now. It's all going to take a little time to get going. This is not an eBay video, but your eBay is going to behave a lot differently once you've had X number of successful sales and positive reviews. You're going to sell things faster later on when eBay goes, oh, okay, you're good to go. Your antique booth store is going to sell a bit different whenever the regulars know you're there after a certain period of time, and they know when to come when you've restocked, and you got to get into it now. That's the only real advice I can give you. You just start doing it now. Bust your ass with your regular jobs for a little while. It's going to suck. You're going to be tired. We've been there, believe me. But it's all paying off now. We don't work so hard now. We work hard, don't get me wrong, but it's not real. You know what I'm talking about. It's not real job.
Yeah.
It's not real job hard. It's not. All right, so Beefy Burrito has asked a question here that we've pretty much already answered, but there's some nuance here in this question I think we should talk about. I am interested in the amount you get biweekly as well as the rent or other fees you pay to keep the booth running. Any information will help. I'm a full-time eBay seller, so most of the bulkier items that I don't enjoy shipping, I would potentially like to start a booth to expand on another form of income. Thanks. There's a lot in there that really kind of resonates with us in that question. We already answered the booth fees, et cetera, et cetera. Simply making these videos starting out as game collecting videos. We didn't resell really at all at the beginning of the channel. We were reselling, it was just clothing, but it wasn't part of the channel. When Hannah quit her job, came on full time, basically to the channel, we've basically become a reselling channel. Because of how we think about the channel, we don't want to be a reseller channel, we don't want to be a gaming channel, we're just trying to be a vlog channel. But you end up where you end up and we're doing what we do, so we're not unaware of what's going on. But I do want to say that doing all that we do already, opening these booths was a nice extension for us. We had stuff that was left over from what we were doing otherwise, just like you're saying, bulkier items we didn't want to ship. They go to the dish booth now. For sure. That was stuff we already bought and made our mistakes on. We didn't want to ship it, or we had too many bad experiences shipping. So your sentiment is right on. There's a lot of ways in which if you're already a reseller, you can find a way to make this booth thing a nice add-on to what you do. Most of you, I wouldn't recommend it being your only thing, your full-time gig, unless you can create a situation like that extreme I've already talked about. Beefy Burrito, take the information that we gave you with a grain of salt about the money and the fees, and then go find out about yours. And then really consider whether or not you've got enough junk laying around to do it. And if you do, I say do it. I give you my thumbs up. I think you should do it. Next question. Kat Parker has asked, how much would you recommend someone to have before opening a booth? I'm assuming you mean product, but we'll kind of answer that with money too, just in case you were wondering that. That's a good question. That's really going to depend on the size of the booth. Honestly, I say to get started, just enough to fill it. I wouldn't say you have to have enough saved up to double it. Every time that we've opened a new booth, it's been because we've almost had enough. Honestly, every time we've opened a booth, we've probably put 40 to 50, only half of as much as would fit in there, and taken the next few weeks to fill it up. And maybe this is something I should have talked about in an earlier section. We have had people concerned when we moved in booths, hey, you're not getting that filled up too much. Is everything okay? I even had one booth we moved into, I expressed, we were asked to move into this place, we want your toys, we like your yellow shelves. Well, I said, yes, but it's gonna take me a month to fill it up. And it was 2 weeks in. Hey, you don't have very much in your booth. You know, you can put more in there. It's like, I told you it's gonna take a month. It's just kind of how it's how it's gonna go. Get stuff in there. If you've got a bunch of stuff laying around, get started. Do double time sourcing over the next month. Now, that kind of sentiment's not gonna sit well with everyone. I know plenty of people watched us on this channel opening our booths, and we had several people every time we opened one try to warn us and tell us to slow down, et cetera, et cetera. But we had money saved up. We had money set aside. It was a gamble we were willing to take. But we made our mathematical calculations. You have to make yours. That's how that's going to work for you. But that is a great question. So thank you very much for asking it. Just enough to get started is all you have to have. Money-wise, though, it would be nice if you could pay your first month's rent and have enough set aside that you don't have to worry about it for the next month in case you do lose money or owe money. Hasn't happened to us, could happen to you. Too many variables to make that promise. But product-wise, I'd say half. Money, I'd say double.
Sounds good. Another
question, what is your backup plan if the booth's shut down for a while? eBay, Marketplace. So we've pretty much already answered that, but I'm going to answer this question again just to reiterate strongly. These booths are going to be to your best interest if you consider them one of many revenue streams.
Yes.
Period. The end. This isn't our we have a backup plan, but our backup plan is our other 8 revenue streams. We wouldn't be surviving right now if it weren't for all those other cash flows. So another question that we've kind of answered, and honestly, I'm just going to answer it because it literally popped up while we were sitting here. Someone just now, seconds ago, asked this question: do you experience a lot of theft from your booth? And I'm answering this because they asked specifically, what about stickers and buttons? I would think those would be easy for people to steal. Honestly, I never counted our buttons or stickers before we put them in there. So I'm sure some kid somewhere has put some of them in our pockets, but sometimes and in some periods we've made more money off those buttons and stickers than anything else. So the theft is not enough to matter. And I'm answering this question again to reiterate: if you're putting that much emphasis on the theft, you just don't you're in the wrong. You're thinking about it wrong. I'm very rarely going to tell you. I'm very rarely going to be the person to just say you're completely wrong about something. The theft is not an issue. It's going to happen a little bit. Do the work to minimize it, package things well, etc. But don't worry about it. It's not a real problem. So this next bit isn't really a question. It's something that someone commented in our Discord that I think would just be a good little bit of information to put in here, just so you can see someone else's experience with this. But Mandy, who is a regular contributor over on our Discord, said our shelves where she is are $60 a shelf in a lockbox. So I think the whole lockbox is probably $60, $50, $10 less without a locked door on the front of it. And the cheapest booth space goes for about $250. And to be fair, she says it is the largest and most well-known antique mall here in Orlando, so it's prime real estate, but was curious what the prices were like in Phoenix. So she was asking the prices in Phoenix, which we've already told you, but it's really neat, I think, to add that information just so you know what it looks like somewhere else. I find that very interesting. $250 is... We have two booths here that make our average go way up, but otherwise, forget the high booths. It's kind of average from what we're seeing here. So, because Orlando's a big city like Phoenix, and it's going to be such a different experience if you're in a small town like my hometown, 60,000 people, or Orlando and here, which has millions, essentially.
And I think the lock boxes at both of the antique malls here are about $60 too, so it's really comparable.
Yeah, and it's a really good entry, the lock boxes. And I remember when Mandy, when she got their lock box, she was telling us about it, and it was good to know that they are cheaper elsewhere. We've even thought about getting a lockbox in addition to our booths. Just like I have my toy booth has camera equipment on one shelf and it's out of place. It might be better in the lockbox. So some of you might consider getting both. Start with one and then keep it and get the other. You never know. But that's looking like that's all the questions. So let's just reiterate here at the end. It's a great potential for another revenue stream if you're a reseller or looking to start some reselling revenue streams. I think that should be your biggest takeaway from this. The information about how much we make, I'll be very interested to know if some of you watching want to share. I mean, you don't have to tell us dollar amounts if you want, but just tell us your money is comparable or lower or different. I definitely, if you have any experience at all with doing what we're talking about in this video, help the other people out watching, unless you're the stingy type with your information and you see everybody as competition, I guess. If you don't feel that way, maybe be giving with your information and comment below here and tell people what it's like for you in your area, so that perhaps people doing this can get some information to add to the information that we've just given, and then maybe we can all find a better center point to come together and quit with the real jobs. Because that's why most of you are here. I know. You don't want to do the real jobs, and I don't blame you. I'm not going back to that life either. So that's going to be it. Anything else you want to add? Anything else we need to talk about before we get out of here?
Y'all are great.
You guys are great. Thank you so much for waiting for this video, because we've been getting these questions for months and months. How long has it been since we opened that first booth? When did we go home?
I think it was February.
Yeah, and it is now August.
Yes.
So it took us a while to make this video. We probably should have made this for you months ago, but we're better suited to answer these questions now. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got something from it. Do comment below before you go. Let us know how this resonates with you. But that is going to be it, guys. Listen, before we get out of here, do me a couple favors. Check out our merch store, tintostrash.com. Maybe consider buying some merch and supporting us. We just, right before we filmed this video, sent out some buttons and Nintendo shades and shirts. We sold a little bit this week, so keep on buying, I guess. Also, before we get out of here, check out our Discord. That is where I sourced all of these questions. If we have an interaction with you guys, it's almost definitely going to happen here, though it happens obviously in the comments section below sometimes. But the Discord's like the comments with extra steps. You can add pictures and do a little bit more and be a little bit more organized, right? So I would consider joining if you're into anything we're into. It's not just for reselling. I have people sometimes ask if our Discord is just for resellers or gamers. It's none of that. It's for our community. We make daily videos here. We're daily vloggers essentially, and the Discord is just there to facilitate all the other needs of communication with you guys. So if you're into these types of videos where we communicate with you guys, the Discord is going to be where it's at. So go join that. The link is below this video. And then hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We're on our way to 6,000 subs. I've lost track. And if you would not mind helping us keep that momentum, just hit that subscribe button. That's going to be it for today, guys. Come back tomorrow for a normal... I just kicked the camera. Hello. You're moving. Come back tomorrow because we do post daily videos here on this channel. And so we'd love to see you back. So until next time, guys, peace out.